Yeah. Good to be with you all, my friends. Let's see if I can pull up our latest and greatest. So we're in chapter 42, 43, right? So last week we Joseph is in prison interpreting the dreams of Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker, which goes well for one and not so well for the other. Then Joseph interpreted those dreams of the king, right? And that's sort of where we left. We concluded with Pharaoh having heard Joseph's big plan, but this is now we'll look at what Pharaoh responds. We referenced it last week, but I think we could just go ahead and read it. It's not a complex reading, but it's worth looking at. 41, this is the balance of the chapter of 41. The proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find anyone else like this one? Like this one in whom the Spirit of God?" So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown you all this, there is no one discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only with regard to the throne will I be greater than you." And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." Removing his signet ring from his hand, Pharaoh put it on Joseph's hand, and he arrayed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride in the chariot of his second in command, and they cried out in front of him, "Bow the knee." Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no one shall lift up hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zaphnath Paneah. We'll go with that. And he gave him Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, as his wife. Thus Joseph gained authority over the land of Egypt. So just like that, Joseph is in charge. He began the day as a prisoner, ends it in charge of the entire empire, or at least most of the empire. Brueggemann notes the entire procedure appears to be a proper Egyptian litany of installation. That is, he is given a signet ring. He is given a daughter of one of the high priests to marry. He is given the chariot and all of these, very clear symbols of authority to be installed, seemingly overnight. Not overnight, in an afternoon or in one conversation. But it happens quickly, and suddenly Joseph goes from, again, being in charge of a prison to fulfilling pretty much the entire thing, right? All that whole idea of being someone in charge, he suddenly is. You're going to say something,
I
Stefan?
just have a yeah, I just really do, because it's my understanding of Egypt and religions and that kind of thing, that the Pharaoh was God. So how does he all of a sudden recognize Joseph's God? This is the only thing that concerns me, Bill. That's all. Where did that come
Well,
from?
I think it may just be, if you're in a polytheistic system, what's one more God?
Oh, okay.
I
Gotcha.
mean,
Okay.
maybe I don't know. It does seem weird if you're like, I am the son of Ra or whatever. I think is what the Egyptian pharaohs were typically claimed to be. Um, then it does seem odd to suddenly go, well, your God sure seems to know what's going on, so let's go ahead and bring him into the system. Seems weird, but maybe it's just that easy. And I guess you could interpret it in a way that says Pharaoh is not necessarily approving uh, of the God of Israel as much as he's just saying, clearly you have like divine like insight, right? Like clearly you know something about the gods that I don't.
Okay.
But I don't know. That is a good question, because there are these times when they say that and you go, when someone will say things like that and you go, well, do they actually believe in that God, or are they just wowed by the situation? I don't know.
But when
Good.
you read this and you listen to it, it's almost like a classical fairy tale.
It is. It is. God serving the fairy godmother role in this one, right? Sort of sprinkles the dust and reverses everything.
Yeah.
But a nice fairy tale.
It is a good one. It is a good one. So, just closing out the chapter, then Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt. And during the 7 plenteous years, the earth produced abundantly. So it's not a bad gig. I mean, Joseph's 30. He's got 14 years minimum of service that is coming his way. So he's going to make it to 44 pretty easy, right? With being number 2. That's a good season. He gathered up all the food of the 7 years when there was plenty in the land of Egypt and stored up food in the cities. And he stored up in every city the food from the fields around it. So Joseph stored up grain in such abundance like the sand of the sea that he stopped measuring it. It was beyond measure. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Before the years of famine came, Joseph had 2 sons, whom Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. The second he named Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my misfortunes. The 7 years of plenty that prevailed in the land of Egypt came to an end. The 7 years of famine began to come, just as Joseph had said. There was famine in every country, but throughout the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread, and Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. What he says to you, do. And since the famine had spread over all the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the world came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain because the famine became severe throughout the world. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, why do you keep looking at one another? I have heard, he said, that there is grain in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he feared that harm might come to him. Thus the sons of Israel were among the other people who came to buy grain, for the famine had reached the land of Canaan. So the dreams of Pharaoh have come true. Joseph proves his ability to lead. Everything is going perfectly according to plan. The world ultimately makes its way to the dreamer, right? The entire world is starving. They all go to be fed in Egypt. The interesting thing is, however much longer, this is probably, depending on which way they rank it, a lot of times it's around 1500 BC, is it the rough dating of this kind of stuff. 1500 years later, Rome still looks to Egypt for its granaries and its wheat production. It is a incredibly fertile area, and it still is, that feeding whole regions of the world because of its ability to plant and grow grain. But even now, the brothers of Jacob are brought low enough to travel and beg in Egypt, right? And interestingly, it's not the brothers who decide to do this, it's Jacob who makes the choice to do this, right? He is the instigator with sending everybody down to Egypt and figuring this out. Brueggemann notes that last we saw Joseph as a young man, afraid and guileless, right? Like the sort of sequence before, he was begging for the cupbearer to remember him. He was begging for people to help get him out of prison. Now he is 40-ish years old, a powerful leader in Egypt who has complete control, and he knows it, especially after being in charge for 7 to 10 years, right? He has ruled Egypt. He is a fundamentally different human being. So much so, he names his son, I forgot about my family. Which I think if you name your son that, then you probably haven't really forgot about your family, but we'll go with that. So the brilliance of the narrative, of course, is that we have an idea of what's going to happen next, right? We know that because of the prophecy, that the brothers are going to come and they're going to bow and it's all going to change everything, right? That this whole process is going to happen. They'll beg, they'll fulfill that dream, but then what will Joseph do? That's the true dramatic question. Okay, Joseph knew this day was coming. The brothers knew this day was coming. And we as readers know this day is coming, but what's going to be the real process? Because we didn't know that, of course, there would be such animosity between the brothers that it leads to it. So what should we expect at the moment is the fundamental question. Of course, it's hard for us to ask because we've all heard the story so many times. We know exactly what's going to happen. But that is, if you're just hearing the story for the first time, that is the brilliance of the story, right? Dramatic foreshadowing is all over the place, and the irony of those brothers coming to worship a guy they sold into slavery is huge. Or to beg, not worship, to beg him. Other thoughts on that first part? Anytime. Yeah, this is a pretty straightforward. There's some narratives you go, ooh, what about this or what about that? This is one that's pretty straightforward, which is why it's so great too. I think it's got just enough detail to make it interesting, but not so much that you get lost in the narrative.
There's only one little pile of weeds I want to get in because this has always been a mystery to me, and that is, what is the significance of Benjamin?
Benjamin? He's the only
Yes.
daughter of his favorite wife. He's the only son of his favorite wife, rather. Joseph and Benjamin were both the sons of Rachel, who was Jacob's favorite wife. And so having lost Joseph, it probably made Benjamin even more. He was the absolute baby of the family, and he was the only other son of his favorite spouse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That answers a question I've had for years.
It's a good one to ask.
Well, it's always seems like he's singled out somehow as sort of an exception, or I
Right.
mean, he's singled out when other brothers aren't, and I've always wondered why, because we never really get an explanation.
There's no explicit explanation other than just what we've read before, right? Which the whole reason with all that whole narrative about, Leah having all these sons and then giving off her maidservant, and the other maid, Rachel, gives her maidservant, and all of that. But it all comes back to Jacob just wanted to have kids with Rachel and didn't really care about any of the other women, and apparently any of the other sons. So we have to go back and look at that chapter to get it, but it's never made explicit in the text. But that's why Benjamin matters.
Okay, riddle solved. Thank you.
Sure. So now Joseph was governor over the land. It was he who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. And when Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them. But he treated them like strangers and spoke harshly to them. Where do you come from? He said. They said, from the land of Canaan, to buy food. Although Joseph had recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Joseph also remembered the dreams that he had dreamed about them. And he said to them, you are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land. They said to him, no, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies. But he said to them, no, you have come to see the nakedness of the land. They said, we, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of a certain man in the land of Canaan. The youngest, however, is now with our father, and one is no more. But Joseph said to them, it is just as I have said to you, you are spies. Here is how you shall be tested. As Pharaoh lives, you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Let one of you go and bring your brother, while the rest of you remain in prison, in order that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you, or else, as Pharaoh lives, surely you are spies. And he put them all together in prison for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here, where you are imprisoned. The rest of you shall go and carry grain for the famine of your households, and bring your youngest brother to me. Thus your words will be verified, and you shall not die. They agreed to do so. They said to one another, alas, we are paying the penalty for what we did to our brother. We saw his anguish when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. That is why this anguish has come upon us. Then Reuben answered them, did I tell you not to wrong the boy? But you would not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. They did not know that Joseph understood them. since he spoke with them through an interpreter. He turned away from them and wept. Then he returned and spoke to them, and he picked out Simeon and had him bound before their eyes. Joseph then gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to return every man's money to his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. And this was done for them. So, personally, I think Joseph rightly chooses to test his brothers to see if they are evil or mean or who they are at this point as human beings, right? Like, who are these guys? The last time I saw them, they left me in a pit and sold me to a bunch of random guys as a slave. Like, are these still terrible people? Are these really the horrible people I remember, or am I getting it wrong, right? Which is pretty magnanimous even in that, quite frankly. But the interesting thing Brueggemann points out is they are bound by the power of an unforgiven past. That is, the brothers show that they are a mess. They are bound by that power of an unforgiven past, immobilized by guilt and driven by anxiety, right? Like anything that seems to go wrong, they're like, oh, this went wrong because of what we did to Joseph. It seems to be, you have to wonder if maybe they were saying that about everything to a certain degree, right? Anything that goes wrong, oh, we should have done that to Joseph. We're terrible. I don't know if I buy that completely, but that's Brueggemann's take on it. We do know that Joseph sees it as sincere, right? That it's been, well, let's see, it was 14 years from that. So it's been almost 20 years since he has seen his brothers. And it would be, I imagine, pretty darn emotional if they suddenly remember you while you're standing next to them, not knowing that you're there, right? I mean, that's a pretty amazing moment. And then that question, Craig, that you asked, why does he require Benjamin? That's his only full brother, right? The other brothers are all from other mothers. They're all half brothers, but Benjamin is his one and only true brother, and it's his baby brother. And the way that this comes out, I've often wondered if Benjamin was actually part of those brothers' plan to kill or sell Joseph. That is, I think it makes more sense if there 10 of the brothers were trying to kill or to sell Joseph, and Benjamin was back home because he was younger than Joseph, and not part of that plan. The text seems to say that Benjamin was there, and I'm not sure that that's completely accurate, but who knows?
I would have thought he would have wanted to see Benjamin because he was his full brother, and also that's because he was now the favorite. And,
right.
And
in Joseph's absence, Benjamin clearly becomes the favorite. Yeah.
Right, that he was now the favorite, and his father would not have wanted anything to happen to Benjamin.
Right.
That would have been tough.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the text literally will say the brothers, but Benjamin still holds this extra place for both Jacob and for Joseph.
Right, because of who his mother was.
Probably because of who his mother was, and because he's the baby, a little bit of both, but yeah.
Right, the baby of the family.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing we have to name, if Joseph is now late 30s, early 40s, depending on how you date, how far it is into this process. He was 30 when he takes over Egypt. It's 7 years for sure of plenty, and then it's several years, but it's not sure if it's 2, 3, or 4 years of the famine. He's around 40. Then, Reuben and Simeon and some of these oldest guys are probably in their 60s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, they're considerably older.
And probably have carried a guilt, all these years for what they did to their brother.
Yeah.
They should have.
They should have. Freetham does note that it's probably because Reuben spoke up for him. Reuben's the oldest.
Mm-hmm.
And probably would have been the most likely person to take as a hostage or whatever, or to say like only one of you has to stay behind. But because Reuben spoke up for Joseph, and both at the time years ago and in this moment, that Joseph then goes, well, then I'll go with the second oldest. I'll bind Simeon instead, right? Like, Well, Reuben actually tried to help me. Simeon, you're the guy.
Mhm.
You're the guy I'm gonna grab. But
Now that I know the whole story,
yeah,
yeah. We have an extra visitor for a Bible study.
I see that.
There we go.
So we continue the tale here in 42. They loaded their donkeys with the grain and departed. When one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money at the top of the sack. He said to his brothers, "My money has been put back. Here it is in my sack." At this, they lost heart and turned trembling to one another, saying, "What is it? What is this that God has done to us?" I'll stop here and just go ahead and explain it, because they're obviously concerned that Simeon is stuck back in Egypt, and because he's stuck back in Egypt, if they think that now that Egypt believes that they have stolen the money as well as the grain, they may have sacrificed Simeon, right? Is at least part of that, or what horrible thing has happened, because they accuse us of being spies. Now they're going to accuse us of being thieves as well, which perhaps we are. When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, "The man, the Lord of the land, spoke harshly to us and charged us with spying on the land. But we said to him, 'We are honest men. We are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is now with our father in the land of Canaan.' Then the man, the Lord of the land, said to us, 'By this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me. Take grain for the famine of your households and go your way. Bring your youngest brother to me, and I shall know that you are not spies, but honest men. Then I will release your brother to you, and you may trade in the land.' As they were emptying their sacks, there in each one's sack was his bag of money. When they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were dismayed. And their father Jacob said to them, 'I am the one you have bereaved of children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and now you would take Benjamin. All this has happened to me.' Then Reuben said to his father, 'You may kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you.' But he said, 'My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left. If harm should come to him on the journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol.' So Phretha makes several notes that the silver Joseph returns, maybe to heap a little extra guilt on the brothers who sold him for silver. I didn't catch that. I don't know if that's explicitly true, but I like that sort of twist to it, if that's what Joseph is doing. I think it's really more of a test to see if they're honest men, right? He gives them back the money and now they're freaking out. He also notes that, quote, their brother's first reference to God represents another advancement in their development. That is, they see that the money is in their bags, and they say, "What has God done to us in giving us this money back? Are we in, our brother has been killed," thinking that Simeon probably would be killed if they thought that they had stolen from the Egyptians. Like, what is going on? I don't know if I agree that it's a moral advancement, but it is interesting that that is the first reference of any of the brothers to God. That I found fascinating. But then Jacob, interestingly, refuses the idea of sending Benjamin to Egypt, saying, "Better that Simeon be lost than risk losing Benjamin too." Yikes. So while we can say that maybe the brothers have learned, they certainly have shown guilt. I would argue that while the brothers seem to have grown and changed, Jacob hasn't got a clue. He hasn't improved. If anything, he's gotten worse. Rachel and Benjamin still loom large over all the other brothers, right? Like, you might want to say that, since Joseph died, that maybe he realized favoring him wasn't a good idea or other things, but he's just doubled down, and now Benjamin's the favorite, and Benjamin can't even leave the house, who probably is a 35 to 38, 40-year-old man, right? I mean, this is a crazy conversation, but it is one that Jacob literally refuses to let anybody go back and get Simeon because he doesn't want to risk losing Benjamin. And then once again, like you were saying, Craig, clearly Benjamin's the most important, and it's because of that Rachel connection, the last of the sons from his favorite wife. So, thoughts on all that? We've looked at sort of 2 chapters here. Have the brothers grown? Has Joseph grown? What do we make of the testing that Joseph does of the brothers? How do we engage all of this? Because there's a lot going on.
I think over the years, the brothers have grown because they have seen the grief that it caused their father when he lost Joseph.
I think
And
that's
then,
right.
and then Joseph has grown more mature with all of his responsibilities and everything. He's just grown with age and gained more wisdom. And then Joseph didn't know if his brothers had changed or not. So that's why he had to test them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, he was just being prudent.
Oh, absolutely. You can't. There's no way I'm faulting Joseph for testing a bunch of guys who sold you into slavery.
But when you think about the brothers growing, I think they haven't, and the fact that he would say, you can kill my 2 sons if I don't bring Benjamin back. To make that offer is pretty
Yeah.
dramatic,
Pretty amazing.
you know, to think this is what we have to do to save our entire family, all of us, and offer your sons. That's pretty.
Well,
Right.
kind of the way I look at all this is when you say have the brothers grown, I'm the whole reason that they sold Joseph into slavery was because of, he was their dad's favorite.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, yes, Benjamin is the favorite, maybe even worse than Joseph
Probably.
as time has gone by, but the brothers are handling it a whole lot differently.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yes, I guess the brothers have grown.
Mhm.
And
Matured.
certainly appear from the earlier passages to feel really bad about what they did to Joseph.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think.
Like
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's like a sin or guilt they carry in their soul or on their heart that has just changed them, and they become more mature and kind.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Could it also be that they're just hungry and want to?
True, true. Mhm.
Yep. Amen to
And
that.
we-
There is that. Yeah, there is that.
You know, there's
Really good point,
in
Roy.
that.
We're starving. We have to do whatever.
Say what we need to say and do what we need to do.
That's the flip side of it. When you're hungry and your family's starving, you might do anything.
Very, very good. Just cut to the chase. The whole bottom.
Mhm.
We're all starving.
I will say I mean, I think the ultimate test of Joseph isn't as much there's sort of a minor test with the silver and putting the silver back in the bag. I think that might have been just to torture them or to tease them or mock them or make them anxious. I think the bigger thing that he's truly testing is, well, you gave me up and just left me in Egypt. You didn't realize Egypt, but you left me basically in Egypt. Are you going to come back and get as Simeon, right? Like, I think that's the true test, is more than anything else. Like, yes, I want to see Benjamin, but are you guys going to actually come back and get one of your own or not?
Mhm.
Right. I mean, I think that's truly what Joseph is testing in all of this.
Right.
Um,
Now that you have the grain. do
You got
get
your
what
grain.
brother-
I fed you. You're okay. You going to come back and get your brother, or what's going to happen here?
Well, how much grain did they get? Is it enough to tide them over 3 months, 6 months, or a year? And then they'll have to go back and request or, try to buy more grain when this runs out. So
Right.
Joseph's probably thinking they have to come back at some point in time.
Oh, I'm positive of that. Yes.
Mhm.
Yep. The other thing I will say that I think the brothers, and it just caught me just now when we were talking about it, when y'all were sort of sharing ideas, that the brothers, I think, have grown in part because they saw what damage it did to Joseph, like the grief on, not on Joseph, on Jacob. But I actually think the other thing is what Reuben offers, right? Like, now I understand what it's like to even think about losing a kid, right? Now he has sons. He's starting to understand, like, oh, what we did was horrible just as a brother to another brother, but we've seen what it did to my dad. And then I saw how it, like, now that I've got children, I understand it even more, right? There's that, I think empathy grows too with that, some of that, as he's got kids and he starts to look around and go, oh, wow, we've got to, and show, that really, to me, also shows the degree to which Simeon is important to the family. Like, we're going to go back, we're just going to take Benjamin and we're going to keep everybody safe, but we've got to go back and we're not leaving another brother behind, right? That's ultimately what Reuben's dedication shows as well. That deep passion to try and make it right.
Didn't it say that Joseph is the one who picked Simeon to stay?
Yes.
Mhm.
Then
He is the one
why? I'm wondering why Simeon.
I think it's 100% that, and this is from Freetham, but it makes perfect sense that Reuben shares in the dungeon that, I told you guys you shouldn't have killed him and you shouldn't have done anything to Joseph. Like, not realizing, clearly what we get the implication is that because there was a translator, they didn't know what he was saying, right? We have that one little line that most likely Joseph is dressed as an Egyptian. He is clothed and, looks like an Egyptian and is speaking Egyptian, right? He's speaking whatever Coptic dialect. And then the brothers are likely speaking Hebrew, right? And they don't realize that Joseph is their brother because he looks like an Egyptian. And they sure as heck don't realize he's speaking in Hebrew. So it's one of those, he understood what they were saying. So that's number one. And then number two, it's in that context where they really believe that they were having a conversation and this Egyptian guy couldn't understand him, that he overhears Reuben saying, I told you guys not to do anything to Joseph. And he realizes, well, I'm not going to take Reuben because Reuben was on my side, but I'm going to take the next oldest one in line, right? I think is why he chose Simeon over the others. Roy, is just because, well, he's the next oldest one in the line and he should have known better. And I'm going to throw him in jail and see what he thinks of it.
Okay, thanks.
Makes sense.
But when you say throws him in jail, he's not mistreating these folks. Okay, he's not mistreating his brothers. He gives them all this food and their money back. He didn't take any money for it.
Yeah. Well, no, it is unclear what he does to Simeon. Right. He said they had him bound and gagged and like drug away in front of the brothers. But it's not, I don't think it's ever clear. I'll have to look at the next chapter, but I don't think it's ever clear if Simeon was thrown into the same jail that Joseph was in, or if he's just under house arrest and sort of hangs out in a nice place while he's waiting for his brothers to come get him. That part isn't clear at all. Not for how long he's there, not for, I don't think there's any of those things that really show up in the next couple chapters, but we'll have to look at that next.
Right. How long did it take them to go back and get Benjamin and come back and,
Yeah.
They didn't have interstates.
nope.
Or even cars, okay? Okay.
How long does it take
But-
you on a camel?
I'm assuming that they walked.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Crank up the camel.
Yeah. So,
That's it. That's what I'm assuming, okay? So,
Yeah. I'm sure.
it probably took a while.
I don't know. This is a good question. I'm sort of Googling right now. How long would it take to walk? It's 600 kilometers, give or take, from Egypt to Israel or Israel to Egypt. So,
It's here to Knoxville.
yeah, but that's a
Closest
good,
to Knoxville.
if you're doing about 20 kilometers a day, 20 to 30 kilometers a day, that's gonna take a while. It's
Oh
gonna
my
take a
gosh,
month.
it takes 6 hours in a car going.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
how
but
many?
they weren't in a car and they were stopping everywhere they could, I'm sure. So
Yeah. Oh my
you're talking about 2, 3, I would imagine 3 to 4 weeks most likely to make a journey like that.
Mhm.
And across the desert for a good portion of it.
Mhm.
With 10 miles a day, that'd be about 16 to 20 kilometers. You know, over 400 miles, that's going to take them about 40 days.
Yeah.
That's not counting pit stops or designated tree stops.
Yeah.
What trees? They don't have
Yeah,
much
what
trees out in the
trees?
desert. There's okay.
Designated cactus.
That's actually, yes. Having just gotten back, you're right, Stefan. There ain't any trees out
I
there.
don't know. There wasn't a tree out there.
There's no
There are other
trees.
things, but there
No,
ain't
no,
trees.
no, no,
Okay,
not trees.
designated rock.
Whatever.
no.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
So 40 days out, 40 days back, and how many days did he stay in Israel?
No.
I was looking at the beginning of the next chapter and it just says when the food ran out. So to Roy's point, they got hungry and said, we got to do something again.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say like a year later, 6 months later, or whatever it would be. Just, well, we're running out of food. We got to hurry up.
Simeon got the raw end of that deal.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Staying for a long time.
Well, all right, my friends. Well, I got to go to this other meeting here in a few minutes, but I think
Quite a story.
that gets us to this point. Next week, we'll hear if they get Simeon and get reconciled with brothers. God.
Oh, I think we know the answer to that, Bill, but that's okay.
Well,
Did you read
maybe
ahead?
my Bible's different
Stefan?
than yours.
I'm sorry. I read ahead. I apologize.
You
I
cheated.
just couldn't wait. I wanted to see how the end.
I know, you just couldn't wait.
We'll
Fine.
make you crank the
Spoiler.
camel up.
We're gonna be at Holy Innocents Sunday. Hope to see some of y'all.
Oh, cool. I'll be there.
I'll
Yay,
be there.
good, good.
Good thing. All right, my friends. Well, we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye.
good rest of the
Bye.
day.
Everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.